Hey everyone, Kyle Walker here. If you love cars, fixing things, or just want to understand your vehicle better, you're in the right place. I share hands-on tips, smart driving advice, and straight-up car talk without the fluff. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and stick around till the end. You don't want to miss what's coming up. Let's get into
accident. Even without casualties among road users, it is always stressful for the owner of the car. It is easy to understand his despair at the sight of bruised metal, because the purchase of a vehicle is a very serious money expenditure. Statistics show that about half of the cars that have been in accidents, for one reason or another, are put up for sale. And if the owner, having recovered from the initial worries, decides to sell his iron horse, he really wants to get the maximum benefit for it. And this, due to certain circumstances, is not easy to do. How to sell a car after an accident more expensive and faster? There is no unambiguous answer to this question. Moreover, depending on the amount and nature of damage, you can draw conclusions about the expediency of the sale. In the case of minor superficial damage, the cost of repairing dents may be so small that there may not be much point in selling the car. Therefore, you should definitely not hurry with such a decision. It is necessary to calm down, analyze the nature of the damage, estimate what the repair will cost, estimate how much such a car may cost on the market, and only after weighing all the pros and cons, make a final decision. If the damage to the car is so significant that its restoration will cost a tidy sum, and a quick purchase of another car is not planned, the best option will be to sell the vehicle. In any case, the car owner will be forced to solve the dilemma, whether to repair the damaged car before the sale or to abandon this idea. Here a fairly simple algorithm can help. Determine the approximate cost of restoration of the car, add the result to the value of the car, taking into account the model, mileage, or year of manufacture. Compare the final figure with the market value of similar cars, same model and year. If it is much higher than the market value, you will not be able to sell it at that price, so there is no point in repairing it. However, the profitability of the sale depends on many factors, many of which are not obvious. As an illustrative example, we can cite inflationary processes. The amount spent on repairs today can double in a year. That is, you just need to wait a little bit for the above formula to be profitable for you. Much depends on the character traits of the owner of the beaten car, whether he is ready to sell the car at a specific cost and wait for his buyer, or will start dumping, seeing that time is running out and the real client cannot be found. Factors affecting the possibility of selling a car. Here are only the most significant circumstances on the basis of which you should decide whether to sell the car after the accident, or it will still serve you as the main vehicle. Practice shows, the more budget model of the car, the less cost-effective is the restoration work. Restoration is considered to be unambiguously profitable only for quite expensive cars. The degree of wear and tear on the car, which correlates to some extent with the year of manufacture and less obviously with mileage. Obviously, repairing an older car will cost more than a new one. Here it is worth considering that the restoration work can be made cheaper by using less expensive parts and components. If there are a lot of them, the final sum can be significantly reduced. The nature of damage also plays a significant role. In a traffic accident that led to the transformation of body geometry, not every service station will undertake the repair. The same can be said about significant damage to electrical equipment and wiring, about the presence of defects in the frontal area of the car. On the contrary, if your car was hit in the rear, the number of body elements to be replaced will be much less, and the work itself easier. Serious savings can be achieved if you do the repair yourself, but for this you need to have the appropriate experience, skills, and free time. It will take a lot. We intentionally did not indicate such an important circumstance as the financial capabilities of the owner of the car in relation to the repair, because usually this factor is taken into account in the first place and significantly outweighs all the above arguments. Methodology for estimating the value of a broken-down car. Often it is the assessment of the value of a car that has been through an accident that causes its owner the greatest difficulty. The obvious solution to the problem is to use the services of qualified specialists, and in order to obtain a more accurate assessment, it is advisable to invite several appraisers. Of course, their labor is not free, but the average estimate will be quite accurate. They can also suggest how profitable the sale can be, in what way it will be easier to realize. If the desire to save money on the assessment outweighs, you can use the existing methods of self-execution of this procedure. Comparative analysis method, the most common and simple way to find out the approximate value of your car. It is necessary to study the largest possible number of proposals on the secondary market of cars with similar or slightly different characteristics, deriving the weighted average price, which will serve as a reference point. Note that the accuracy of this method is not high, so you should not neglect the services of an appraiser. Current value method used as the main one by insurance companies. It is characterized by complexity and laboriousness of calculations, because of which it claims to be the most accurate. It requires taking into account many factors, including those mentioned in the previous section. Residual value method, a rather crude method based on factors that affect the degree of wear and tear of the car as it is used. For example, if the car was used as a cab, as a forwarding vehicle, etc. As an example of how to use the method of comparative analysis, here is a sample algorithm of actions on the basis of which you can draw conclusions about whether and how to sell a broken car. As already noted, the method is simple in essence, but will require from you a certain amount of time and effort. Read also, for what truckers hang their name on the glass of the car. So, the first stage is to search for ads for the same model of car with a similar configuration and the same age. As a rule, on specialized sites on the first places are paid ads, in which the cost is usually overstated. That is why it is so important and fundamental to look through all offers, on the basis of which you can calculate the arithmetic average cost. The next step is to determine the cost of restoration work. Visiting one service station will not be enough either, for the same reason. This stage is the most time-consuming and costly, so you can use an alternative option, look through sites specializing in auto repair. But such an assessment will be rougher. Many online services do not follow the rapid change of prices, others do not indicate them at all. Others send a price list only after registration, etc. The final formula will have the following form. IS equals SO, SR plus up, where AS, the sought value taking into account all factors. So, weighted average price on the market of used cars of the same model and age. SR, cost of repair, including the cost of spare parts and consumables. UE, cost of intermediary services. It should be noted that if the resulting value will be very different from the average market value, it will be quite difficult to sell the car. Reduce the figure can be due to the last component, but the independent placement of ads, the work, is very routine. If you want to sell the car quickly, the best option then to use the services of a company engaged in the redemption of cars that have been in an accident, do not find. In this case, to avoid the components of the UE will not be possible, but many services will be provided free of charge: evaluation of the vehicle, registration of a package of documents, transportation of the car. If the time factor for you is not critical, sell the car yourself, but be prepared that the process can stretch for many months or even years. Options for selling a car after an accident. Having decided that the beaten car should be disposed of, having estimated its value with and without repair, it is necessary to make one more important choice: what way of realization of the car to use. Currently, the most common methods of selling cars that have been in an accident are considered the following: using the services of firms that carry out the purchase of this category of vehicles. In the monetary aspect, this is the worst option, but it is very fast, almost instantaneous, and all the formalities of such an office will take over. It is possible to sell a used car on your own. For this you will have to work hard, find the maximum number of specialized sites, register, enter your ad, and regularly visit to update/extend it if necessary. Be prepared for the fact that there will be a lot of views and calls, few, that in this way quickly sell the car is unlikely to succeed if you do not start to knock down the price. The third option, the use of intermediaries, offering their services to sell cars that have been in an accident. In monetary terms, you do not lose anything. Their services they will include in the cost, that is, they will sell the car more expensive than you would do it. But the advantage of this method is different. Such intermediaries have an order of magnitude greater marketing capabilities, which allows them to realize the beaten cars for a reasonable time. In addition, They also take care of many formalities. For those who do not want to burden themselves with additional hassles, this method may be the most preferable. However, your intellectual endeavors will not stop there, because there is still one more dilemma. How? In what form to sell the car after the accident to minimize your losses? And that they will be, you can absolutely not doubt. Let us now consider this very aspect: to sell the car with or without repair. Redemption of broken cars. Partly this option we have already considered. In this case, it is a variation of selling the car as is, practically in the form that the car had after the accident. As a rule, firms specializing in the purchase of such vehicles subsequently engaged in their resale, and much more expensive. The only advantage of this method: speed. The procedure will take a minimum of time. So if you need to sell a car after the accident urgently, although cheap, this is your option. Hurry to resort to it is not worth it, especially if the damage affected only the body parts and the rest of the stuffing remained in working order. In this case, it may be much more profitable to sell the car on individual parts, if you are able to disassemble the car. Moreover, in most cases you will even get more money than selling the whole car, but provided that you can realize most of the units and assemblies, which is problematic and can take a very long time. And to bother with ads is not the most pleasant work. So you should resort to the services of resellers as a last resort, if you not only do not want to do the repair, but also self-sale. 2. And the time is pressing. Where exactly to sell a broken car? It is up to you, but there are far fewer such firms than intermediaries, so the choice will not be too rich. Selling a car after a traffic accident without restoration works. Everything here is not as unambiguous as it seems. On the one hand, there is quite a large category of potential buyers who are forced by the mere sight of a broken car to pass by quickly without delay. But there are also a lot of such buyers who would sooner buy a broken car than a restored one, because they see all the flaws and know what they are buying. The second nuance: get ready for the fact that quickly sell a beaten car without performing at least cosmetic repairs is unlikely to work. But here as luck would have it. Of course, the cost will be lower than the restored vehicle, but the difference is usually less than the cost of repair work and the purchase of spare parts. Read also, what is a zero-resistance filter for? For every product, including a broken car, there is a buyer. Stick to this simple rule. Many people do not have the money to buy even a used car, and for them your car may be the only opportunity to become the owner of a vehicle that can eventually be brought to mind. So even if the car is not on the move, you can sell it too. Just have a little patience and just as much persistence. Selling a repaired car. Of course, this method is the most labor-intensive, but financially it can and should be the most profitable. It can be undertaken only if you have a good command of locksmith tools. Independent repair will cost you at least half as much as at a service station. There are, of course, and intermediate options, the so-called garage repair, cheaper and the same less qualitative. In any case, the time and money spent on repair measures is by no means the only thing to be afraid of. A psychological nuance is important. Potential buyers, having learned that the car has been in an accident, will be afraid that you will not tell them about all the problem areas, and it will be extremely difficult for you to prove the opposite. On the other hand, trying to hide existing flaws is not a good tactic either, and if you do resort to it, problems may arise in the future. And this temptation appears in many people. In the network, there are many materials on the topic of how to sell a broken car correctly, cleverly hiding its shortcomings. It is still more reasonable to be honest in front of buyers, among whom there will certainly be those for whom the fact of getting into an accident is not an insurmountable obstacle. However, today there is no less number of ways to find out whether the car has been in an accident and what exactly was repaired in it. If your words are confirmed after a thorough examination, there is a high probability that such a buyer from the category of potential buyers will move into the category of real. Other ways to sell a car after an accident. We've all heard about junkyards, and many of us have visited such places, where it is possible to buy a necessary, used part at a much lower cost than a new one. Yes, we are again talking about the sale of parts. This method is really good, but there are nuances. There are two options here. You offer the car to those who specialize in dismantling, but in this case, the cost of assessing the parts may be much lower than the market value, which you have to put up with. Another thing, If you have good acquaintances in such places, then the assessment of each part will be more or less adequate. The option of self-sale will be preferable if you have your own garage or other premises in which you can store the car disassembled into parts for any length of time. And quickly you can sell no more than 50 to 60% of the units, and the most exotic parts may not find a buyer. Another thing is if you use the services of a paid parking lot. In this case, there is no question of independent disassembly and sale by parts. Another important point. Even if you intend to sell the car after the accident by yourself and in parts, you will still have to face such unpleasant procedures as visiting the insurance company and deregistration of the car. If a numbered part is sold, for example, a power unit or transmission, it is desirable to document the purchase and sale. This will protect yourself from situations when the sold part will be a figurehead of another accident with unpleasant consequences. Finally, it is impossible not to mention such a rather exotic in the recent past method as the surrender of a broken car and scrap. In developed countries, it has been practiced for quite a long time, but in Russia it is used relatively rarely. The fact is that until recently this method had no state support, but nowadays you can get a substantial discount for a scrap car when buying a new one. Of course, the amount of compensation will be relatively small, in the range of 350,000 rubles. The main factor affecting the amount of discount is the type of vehicle. But if the car is in such a poor condition that it cannot be restored, and it does not make sense to dismantle it for parts, recycling may be quite an acceptable way. To do this, you need to go to the nearest traffic police department to write a statement of intent to dispose of the car, having with you the license plates and registration documents. It is also necessary, when registering in the program, to present documents confirming that you are the owner of the vehicle for at least 6 months, that is, that you are not a reseller. In conclusion, selling a car after an accident involves navigating a complex landscape of legal, financial, and emotional considerations. It's essential to assess the damage accurately, understand your options for repair or sale, and be transparent with potential buyers about the vehicle's history. By doing your research and being prepared, you can make informed decisions that protect your interests and help you move forward. Remember, while the process may seem daunting, taking it step by step can lead to a successful sale and a fresh start. Thank you for watching, and we hope this guide has provided you with valuable insights.